First of all, I want to thank IMTC and AT&T who invited me down here to take some of your time and give our perspective as a customer. If you have some questions about what IBM does in the other space, I can try and answer them, but I really don't work in the services or the product organization. I'm part of IBM research. One of the comments I'll make about what I've heard so far is that there's a lot of similarities between what we're going through as a large enterprise customer and some of the other things that we're hearing, both from from the analysts, from the vendors, from Russ and Merle in the customer space. So it's nice to have that kind of company. Also from a I guess I'll say a frustration factor of we want things, certainly we want it all, we want it fast. You know, if some is good, more is good. So if some is good, more is better, but really enterprises want everything. And I know that's difficult for carriers and vendors, but that's what we keep pushing for, and we'll continue certainly to push for that. So what I'm going to take you through, hopefully fairly quickly, although I do tend to run a little over sometimes, so I don't have Kevlar on. You're welcome to sling arrows, but I will move quickly if I try to get the hook. So I'll take you through some of the background of IBM as a user of video, look at some of the statistics for the enterprise, the timing of why over the recent few years we've really started to accelerate video within the company. We'll look at value, the assumptions for the IBM enterprise, look at some needs in general, what we think for the industry, but also for IBM. Talk about our deployments, our also move towards a VAS model, video as a service, which probably seems interesting again, given that we do provide services for people that we're going with a service ourselves on the outside. Touch on some of the work that we've been doing within research and working with our CIO and organizational partners throughout IBM on video, and just a few final thoughts on the efforts around the industry for vendors and providers. So from a user perspective, as a customer or a user of video, IBM has been at this for quite a long time. We can go back, I've only been in the company 25 years, but at least 30 years, I feel we've been using video in some form or fashion, whether it's simply broadcast training or company information or industry events where they're using satellite or ISDN or a mix, and then you get into, we seem like we've tried everything to try and make video take off within IBM. Within the past 20 years or so, we've actually rolled out a number of video conferencing systems, and you'll see statistics on the next page. But as you can see, the utilization, less than 5%, and I'm probably being kind of generous when I say less than 5% if you look at the time they've been deployed and how much use they've actually gotten. Of course, these are all non-HD. These are primarily SD or less in many cases. And even the PC soft client, we were testing this going back on whether it was IBM's own same time, which had a proprietary video. That goes back about 7 years. We dabbled in it, going back to some of the via video stuff. We've tried that as well, but the big question you see in that next bullet, right? Why wasn't it more widely deployed? You'll see some of the numbers on the next page, and you might say that 600 some video units is a big deployment, but the company is so large, that's a tiny percentage. The PC workstations, of course, that's we could cover hundreds of thousands of people. We don't even come close to making an impact. And some of the reasons we've already gone through, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but it was complexity. It was scheduling, integration. It was the high cost. There were just an awful lot of lack of centralized services, an awful lot of things that prevented us from making this usable and impactful for the IBM business. Now these stats, of course, aren't all specific to video, but they do play a part in what we have to deal with when we try and bring video and unified communications into the IBM culture and using it pervasively throughout the company. So we've got over 400,000 people in the company. 50% of them are mobile or remote at some time within their workday. We actually are in 170 countries. I actually downgraded this to match someone else's presentation in a recent customer briefing, but our recent annual report talks about 170. I haven't looked at all of them, but I'm not sure who the new 10 are, but we can make some guesses. In a sense, tons of phones. We're trying to rationalize that and actually get to fewer, more specific phones to the particular profile of the user. So that's a challenge for us. Toll bypass over our internal network, tons of audio conferencing, 2.4 billion minutes a year. I mentioned the legacy video units, 600 plus, although I would have maintained that probably only about 20% of those, perhaps, somewhere in that neighborhood, are actually used still. There's probably a much greater percentage that are not used at all. And lots of instant messaging, 200,000+ concurrent users. Web conferences growing at a tremendous rate within IBM. So a lot of audio conferencing, a lot of web conferencing. And we have multi-vendor environments. We have consistently for years. We still plan to have multi-vendor environments for voice and video across the IBM globe. So why did the later part of the 2000s become the right time? So some of it was major IBM initiatives and task force within IBM, most of them focused around collaboration and growth of business around the world and how we deal with ourselves as a global enterprise. And video was in every one of them identified as a key component. So that certainly gave us a nice leg up. Some of the other factors were out in the real world, right? Economic conditions, driving cost reductions, heavy focus on green initiatives and reducing carbon footprint. Ironically, we had the need to not only simultaneously reduce the cost, but we had to, at the same time, improve the communications and grow the business. So again, video was looked at as one of the ways that we could do this, and one of the big reasons we could now do it is the solutions have matured significantly. The video has gotten so much better. It's realistic for executive meetings. It's realistic for negotiations. It's realistic for technical people to get together, share real content at high quality, and have good dialogue without having to fly everybody into the same place. And better network capacity. So we think this is going to continue to grow. One of the reasons we're here, we think many of our customers, partners, and suppliers, competitors are going to be doing the same thing. We certainly don't want to be left behind. Value proposition for us, many of the things that you'll see from a lot of the customers. In fact, we touched on some of them already. I won't go through all of them again, but I focus on perhaps the cultural gaps, the language barriers, the fact that video can help with the get to know phase. A lot of these are a little more social based, but they do improve the communication, whether it's within your company or whether it's to people outside of IBM. And to focus on that one on the bottom right, industry leadership, again, we don't want to be in a position, we want to use a competitive advantage within our company for communication, but we also want to be looked at as one of the leaders of IT products and services, and to not use some of this leading edge technology. I'm always frustrated. The research division gets stuff a little sooner than some other sites at times. I'm always frustrated it takes us so long to get it to the rest of IBM. I'm moving through the early part fast because I think the later part will probably generate a little more discussion and conversation or comments, but if you want any questions along the way, certainly don't hesitate to stop me. So what are some of the assumptions for the IBM as an enterprise? Again, as I've said, multi-vendor solutions are going to be utilized. They're in place today. We don't see any sign of that stopping. We'd like some bounds around that so that it's not any device you want to throw in there. I don't mean from a mobile perspective. We want to accommodate different types of laptops and mobile devices, et cetera. But as far as physical appliances, room systems, immersive systems, I don't think we'll go to any vendor somebody wants to throw in. We'd like it to be somewhat contained, but it will certainly be multi-vendor. It'll run the spectrum from handheld devices all the way up to immersive telepresence. STP refers to simulated telepresence, which really is just ad hoc integrated, not ad hoc, but integrated systems, low cost, but still multi-screen, get the benefit of immersive without the high cost. So we're going to leverage internet and video service from providers, which we do, as well as use our own intranet services, whether it be network or video in some cases. One big example of that, of course, would be SameTime. Lotus SameTime's infrastructure, of course, sits within the IBM company. There's no plans to move that out, but a lot of other things may be hosted in the provider environment and using their networks. Two main protocols today. SIP has been strategic within IBM for quite some time. The voice world has moved almost exclusively onto this within IBM. We want the video world to go there, but we realized it was more entrenched in the video world. Voice had an easier time actually weeding the 323 out, and we think video will happen. We want it to happen. We want to keep pushing for that, but we do realize we have to deal with both for now. Even if IBM was completely homogeneous across the board, we want to do so much communication with the outside world, we have to be interoperable anyway. We have to communicate with multi-vendor systems, even if ourselves, and we're not, we're a single vendor solution. We see, and I saw a couple slides on this as well from other presenters, that blending of personal and commercial environments. We see it, of course, on our personal devices that we carry around. We don't think the video communication environment is going to be any different. We already see vendors and providers and carriers, cable providers and all, trying to see how they're going to mix the commercial video with the personal video. We want to get in early on that and see how we can start to position that for our customer base within IBM. And this is actually something that's an interesting discussion point within IBM. Not everyone, believe it or not, within IBM agrees with everyone else. And so sometimes you get a push for one device, get one device, and this is going to be the device. Everyone's going to use a soft client for voice. Okay, maybe most people can use it, but I maintain that there's a profile of user and there's a device that fits them. There's even a category of user who needs multiple devices. Yes, you want to get to fewer, but you want to do the right device for the right job. We think that's the same in video as well as voice, where most of our previous work, at least in my organization, was done. So we talked about assumptions. We'll talk about some of the more specific needs. We don't see a way for us to get that that multi-vendor interoperability inside and outside without the standards. And open APIs and best practices from the carriers, from the vendors. We think that's definitely a cornerstone. We need full interoperability while maintaining appropriate levels of experience. We had to qualify that because when we started to do RFPs, we found it easy for some vendors to say, we're interoperable, but it wasn't the level of interoperability that we needed. Yes, you could create a call. You might put up a suboptimal video image and you were connected. But we had to clarify, we wanted, when you come to telepresence, multi-screen, full resolution, bi-directional, all those good things were thrown into it. So that's what it means by maintaining that experience. If you've got telepresence people in a room, give them the best experience you can get for them. If you've got people on a desktop system sitting at home on a wireless network, do the best you can to get them what they need. Range of meeting experiences. This relates to the same idea in a sense that not everybody's going to do active switching of voice. Not everybody's going to want Brady Bunch tiles. Not everyone's going to be okay with room-based switching. Some want segment-based switching. Luckily, it seems like some of the products already support some of this flexibility, but I don't think the flexibility has gone to the point of putting the control in the hands of the people that are scheduling the meetings. So that gets back to scheduling and integration and automation, is that not only can we tailor the meetings to the particular profile of that meeting, but how do we give the control further down the stack of who's running the meeting in order to make that easy to use. Seamless integration, we've mentioned this as well. I feel like I'm repeating everything from the last day and a half. We need integration with all the major communication services that we have. Content sharing is a major play. Any other collaborative tools that we might bring into that, we want them tightly integrated at the room-based side as well as the desktop side. We don't want to leave people out of the experience. Accessibility refers to enabling people with some kind of impairment. This may be vision, this may be audio. What we found when we interviewed a lot of vendors, because we do have some accessibility people within research that focus on this, and there are some corporate directives about you're going to roll out a new solution, don't forget, and a lot of people do, when they start, nobody starts to talk about the accessibility until they get to the end of it, and then all the big questions are raised. Well, how is this type of person going to be enabled in this meeting? So we don't want to forget this as we go forward either. And of course, adjunct services that we've talked about, and secure traversal. Seems like a very simple thing, but it has not been. And so often, as the case, policies of enterprises, we can call out to you, you can't call into us. So we certainly want that problem to disappear completely as soon as possible. So what is enough? One is just enough. We think names and numbers. We want to get down to one name and one number. We want both, I believe, or you can have a name that translates to a number. Let the system figure out the complexity, but let the people advertise a name, a URI type name like an email if it needs to be. Let the background systems, whether it's DNS, whether it's some clearinghouse, internally and externally, let people find each other by a common identity or a consistent single identity. Integrated scheduling interface. We're already posed with the problems that have been mentioned already. I have to take 3 days to set up a meeting because I need to call 7 people. I have to go into this scheduling interface to get the room. I have to go to another scheduling interface to get the video conferencing, and then maybe check with 3 other people to see if the room will. So we need to go to one place for this. Common meeting refers to when I go into, or early on when we started this heavy focus on the video and the telepresence, we almost immediately said you should get used to, when you come into a video room, not only sharing your content locally within the room so the video meeting participants, multi-point, can see your content, but fire up a web conference so that the people who aren't in the room can see it. And it was done because of quality issues if you couldn't see it well enough, but also for remote participants. Now, as simple as that may be for some, to do that when they get into the meeting, it's one step too many, right? We want the video conferencing. If I'm in a video room and I plug my content share in, I shouldn't have to fire up another app on my PC. The back-end system will figure out that it was supposed to be part of a scheduled web conference. It would automatically feed that to the web conference, and all the remote people who only could do web conference, or who had to because of some quality issue with the video in their share, would go to that. So content is just one part of that. That has to do with audio. Don't force me to set up another audio bridge while I'm having a video meeting. I don't want to do 2 things. I don't want the person to come in and dial video number and then, oh, I forgot to dial my audio bridge with my PIN. Let's make it all one common experience, one interface. Support organizations, we've talked about issues already between different organizations that are not consolidated from a deployment and from a support standpoint. One common session protocol. I realize this is not realistic in the near term, but we certainly want to be one in the core, and we want to be one as many places as we can and do gateways and interworking where we have to. When one is not enough or may not be enough, because some of these you could argue, vendor solutions, network providers for diversity, video providers for diversity. The exchanges have not all paired with each other yet. I wish they had as a customer. They haven't yet. So do I need to fire up a circuit to this exchange provider and these 3 other ones because the customers I need to reach are spread across them? We want that to get to, and that's one of the ones where, could you get to one? Yeah, if they got me to every other place that I wanted to communicate, yes. Types of platform, HD mobile all the way up through immersive. Directories, I guess this would be federated, right? Where we try to get to one, but we certainly want a starting point that gets us to internal and external directories, which of course we may want to be different. We may not want to expose the internal directories to everyone, but we certainly want access on the outside world for people to find us in those directories, and we want to find other people. Media standards, there's a number of them that we need to deal with depending on the nature of the communication. And Yair, am I saying the name right?
Yeah.
Beautiful slide you had on the islands. There's so many of them. This is where there's way too many islands. We need to simplify that. create the bridges if we have to, but reduce the islands completely when we need to. And I will make just one point about same time. I think same time is probably more like a peninsula now, not an island, because they've got some standards capability. I know it's not very simple, but they're getting closer to being less of an island. So I encourage them to keep going faster to get there. And prep times for meetings, that's been, in a sense, beaten to death. I mean, it's way too much time and effort in people in order to get meetings set up, especially for things that you haven't yet called. Okay, this is more of it's kind of a blanket statement with some laundry list items. Some of them are a little bit repetitive. Again, I won't go through them all, you'll have the slides. But basically, and this is what I got back to about some is good, more is better. We want everything, ubiquitous connectivity and reachability. Combine the best of all worlds. Don't make it just about you have to use numbering and that's it to make calls. You have to use URIs to make calls. Make them all available. The information, again, hide the complexity from the user, the customers, but open up whenever we have to facilitate calls, we always end up going through the spectrum. We'd love to talk to you by number. Can we get there? Yeah, but it's ISDN. We really don't want to do ISDN. Can you do IP address? Yeah. Do you have, better yet, do you have domain access? We'll just go to your domain. We don't want to know your IP address. So those are the kind of things we go through, but some people don't have those mechanisms in place. We still want to make those calls. We just want to make it easier. Okay. Any comments or questions about some of those items as you peruse them? The ease of use. Our director was fond of saying caveman ready. I actually Googled it to try and see if he borrowed that from somebody. I couldn't find it. I could certainly see the Geico commercials. So easy a caveman can do it, but I couldn't find caveman ready. Basically, anybody who hasn't seen it before can walk up to the video room or the client and just start to use it.
Bill, with the accessibility integration, my head's kind of been scratching about that. Are you talking about text-to-speech, closed captioning, those types of things?
Yes. Yeah, so we're talking exactly. So, and that's a lot of where the effort seems to be, because it seems to be a little bit easier to deal with that, is taking speech to text for captioning, but it's also about the model with which you introduce that to people. It's about the automation. So this was one example where I said that people kind of think about it at the end when they start to put the new solution out. In the audio conferencing world today, IBM signs up with a company and they can just schedule ahead of time. I think it's about a day ahead of time and say, I need somebody to call into this audio conference meeting and transcribe live. Now that's costly, but it gets the job done. Someone with hearing impairment comes in, they simply point to a website and they're getting a live transcription. We started to do that in the video meetings because the accessibility people joined one of our calls and said, what about this stuff? So we said, we'll use what you use for audio to start with, but we certainly want to use some of the newer stuff that you're looking at for automated speech to text. Very complex. Where do you introduce it? My thinking was, and I actually haven't talked to a lot of, we've asked the vendors about this, there isn't a lot of specifics that we find in the video MCU vendors and endpoints, other than the fact that you can introduce captioning. But I don't know that people have gone to the part of, I mean, the junction points of where the media is a powerful thing. And if you could get more intelligence out of that and leverage those MCU feeds, you could do a better job of translating. The problem with translating at an endpoint side is you've got the mix of everybody's voice coming through, as opposed to the individual streams. You can't identify necessarily who's speaking, whereas if you could do it to the MCU side or wherever the meeting point is, you can do that bubble of who's speaking, and you can put that into the transcription, and you've got better quality because it's that single stream. You've potentially got better quality that you can do the transcription on. So,
are you doing this with a computer today, or is this a manual transcription?
Today, the production service is manual.
It's manual.
Somebody's typing it in, and then somebody looks at the website and they get the feed.
Yeah.
But there are test prototypes that they're doing, the live translation.
On all conferences, or?
No. It's on an as-needed basis, right?
You mentioned the call quality tracking per call. How are you implementing that?
We're not implementing it yet. These are future needs. We certainly want this to happen. We've seen this in the voice world, and in particular with the move to IP telephony, and more noticeable in the move to soft clients, is there's an awful lot of variation in quality with no clear-cut answer as to why. We have all the guesses. We have, it was wireless, he was at a hotel in Japan, and it was a bad network connection. We have all those, symptomatic kind of things that we look at and say, this is maybe why it's happening. Your PC headset was terrible. I mean, but we don't have anything monitoring call by call to say, how good are my calls, which ones are failing, and then try and get back to some kind of correlation and say, where do we need to focus time on fixing this? I'm just extending that and saying, we want that in the voice world, and there's already some small efforts that are starting to try and see where we can do that with our audio environments. I want it for video as well.
Bill, for that better lowest common denominator, do you have a target for that, or just anything better than what you have right now? Is there something that you're striving for?
I don't have specific targets. It was more thrown in to say, for something as simple as don't make me go back to ISDN as the way to do the call, because we don't have the interoperability, right? So I guess it was a sense of maybe something to your point as well, ramping up the base level of core stuff that is supported by the wide variety of vendors, so that when we have these calls between disparate systems, it's a better experience. We don't have to go down to 261 or, that's really more about the technology being more, higher level technologies being more prevalent in more systems.
There's an interim way to do that. It's called managed services. Because you basically have that operating behind the curtain. So you appear as if it's there now, but it's being done to a provider that makes it transparent.
That's transparent doesn't improve the quality of the call. If you guys do the ISDN and upscaling, that's fine. We could do it internally, but that doesn't get everybody on H.264.
Well, you can actually get proactive monitoring of every aspect of the call and the end user, and get that reported back to you on a real-time or regular basis, and that can be used to improve the quality of the experience.
I'm sorry, I apologize. You were back on the quality. I was talking about the lowest common denominator question.
But also,
Yeah.
I mean, the point is that we're not there at the lowest common denominator. So that sometimes the best way is to have some type of oversight or that allows manual operation. It's not manual operation by the end user.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of our recent deployments, I focused more on the recent telepresence and high def. Mobile video carts is really nothing more than a rolling cart with an HD codec on it that makes it more cost effective for a site that may need video in multiple places within the building and cannot afford to put it in every single location, so they'll have the AV teams roll that around and use dynamic addressing and networking. So 29 telepresence rooms around the world. There are more coming. I don't have a good number for you as far as what more are coming, because the budgets are constantly changing, especially this time of year. But I certainly would expect to see another 50% increase in that by the end of the year. I'd be surprised if I didn't. We have several thousand soft clients on a variety of different platforms. That should, of course, change radically when same time the newer stuff that is standards-based is finally rolled out within IBM itself, which is no small task. We often find that our customers are getting all this stuff first because it's so hard to justify the dollars internally to fund massive rollout for 300, 400,000 people. I mentioned the video as a service. I'll show a quick slide in a minute with the diagram. We're playing around with bridging recording services and mobile computing environment. We're anxiously waiting, and I know some vendors are starting to introduce it, where we can start to do true video communication live with the mobile platforms. So this is a simple conceptual diagram of the video as a service and the model that we're looking at, taking the IBM endpoints. These are more of the room systems. Even though the personal video appliance is here, this may actually end up on our main internal network. It depends on on the connectivity that's available. But certainly the HD rooms, the fixed rooms, and the immersive rooms will be on an MPLS video dedicated network. The soft clients, miscellaneous devices that don't fit this model that are remaining on the IBM internal network, what we use today for all of our other data and voice, they'll access that video network because this is not a secure internal IBM network. They'll access it through border controllers. The VNOC, of course, will provide an initial set of services that will include concierge. It will include hosting of bridging, calls, monitoring, all the good stuff that we want from a provider. Go more towards the right, you'll see the video provider networks. So their core networks of hosting, their B2B exchanges, peering, the internet connectivity, the ISDN, so all connectivity outside of IBM, whether it be to someone else on the same exchange or whether it be to outside the exchange, will go through that core and reach any of those type of endpoints in external entities.
Is that big blue block, big blue, no pun intended, box in the middle called VNOC internal, or is that an outsource?
That's part of the VAS. That's part of the video as a service.
Which is internal?
Which is outside. No,
Oh.
everything from the blue block on, and blue wasn't used for any particular IBM blue purpose, but from that point on, this is the video as a service provider that we would get service from.
Okay.
Anything on, and including this
So,
network,
yeah, the VNOC is outsourced, it's not.
that's outsourced. This, in fact, the idea is to have the service provider handle management of all these, even though these are IBM rooms. This network managed, this border controller managed, and the only time the IBM services would get involved internally is anything connected to the IBM network.
So is that in place today, or is that a direction you're moving towards?
We have just started to move towards it within the last 2 months.
So you've selected a vendor or not?
Yes, we have.
I'm not sure that I understand. Is this a private cloud for IBM only, or is it?
This part,
To externalize and offer its assistance to other
yeah, this is not a, this is from the IBM CIO side and IBM as a customer, so this is not what we do for customers. This is what we need to do for our enterprise. So this is a private dedicated network for IBM from the provider. And this is a completely provider network that would have IBM as a customer as well as dozens of other customers and peering to internet and other environments. We're not in a position to do so, and that's certainly been a help across the board. So what we see as some major focus areas going forward for our work, the room deployments are going to continue. We're going to ramp up the PC clients. There are a set of initial enterprise standards. We'll help the company to refine those for video conferencing. More work in interop and security. Talked about that tight integration, collaboration. Mobile platforms are a big key, not just for participating live in meetings, but also for interacting with the meeting, being able to administer them as a chair or as a VidCon administrator. What can we do with these platforms that can help the overall meeting experience? Scheduling we got into, privacy and security. Let me move on. And just a few final thoughts. So delivering better public network connectivity for video communications. It seems to me that some of the exchanges allow you to go direct to internet or come from internet. Some of them don't. We want to be able to go in and out to the internet. We want to be able to have dial-out meetings capable from administration or automation. We also want dial-in capabilities. So we want the flexibility of, like we have with audio conferencing, where everyone can be given a number or a name and just dial in. Gateways to the islands that can't stop becoming islands. We don't see a lot of this yet. I'd certainly like access to FaceTime. Every time a new one comes up, like, this is fantastic, and we can't get access to it from the standard world. More extensive peering and a continued iterative improvement. I think this is just going to be ongoing. Interop and security. Security is always staying, again, one step ahead of the bad guys, so I mean that just needs to continue. And with that, there are some backup slides. You have a copy of the slides, I believe, will be provided. So any final questions? Yes?
Besides the interoperability, what's your biggest pain point?
I talked about it yesterday. It's the scheduling integration, I think, would be really near the top. Yeah, directories, dial plans, scheduling, that would be a big one.
So
Ease of use.
For directories, what's your vision of directories? You want your enterprise directory be available the same way you use for Outlook, be available on the video side?
So I would look at it more of a federated or model internally and externally that provides the directory component or identity of someone that is applicable. So if I'm in same time and I'm on a messaging client and I'm used to names, then I'm going to find somebody as a contact to look them up, and I'm going to click and I'm going to go. If it's an outside person, I want everyone to get on board with DNS. If DNS is not the right thing, then let's get the other thing in place quickly and go to that, because I want to be able to call submit at AT&T.com. I want to be able to call you here at radvision.com. I don't want to care about what I need, what else I need to find. If your email matches your VidCon name, I'm in great shape. I want, because numbers are important to people who only have the keypad, I want numbers to be also, if it goes through the DNS or enum and tracks and finds the person, and you're always submit at AT&T.com, let the directory infrastructures figure out how to map that, and vice versa. Go from name to number, go from number to name, hide all that complexity.
So who do you look to sell these products?
Industry consortiums, combination of industry consortiums, carriers, and vendors. Who do I look to with one person specifically? I don't have one single place to look.
Those are all carrier issues or service provider issues.
These,
Not really.
this one would be vendor. This one would be vendor and carrier. Yeah, the other one, this one could certainly be vendor or third-party vendor. These are certainly more carrier-based. Maybe I didn't understand the